I heard her best friend coaching her, tell him you need space and watch him crumble. When she made her big announcement, I just smiled. Perfect timing. I pulled out my transfer letter and said, "This makes everything easier." Her smug expression vanished when, you ever have that moment when someone thinks they're running the perfect play on you, but you've been watching them draw it up on the whiteboard for 3 weeks straight? That's exactly what happened when my wife decided to follow her divorce attorney best friend's advice about announcing a break to make me desperate enough to transform into her ideal husband. The irony here is almost poetic. Her friend makes a living off failed marriages, and she was about to add another one to her statistics. Just not the way she planned. Here's the thing about manipulation tactics. They work great on people who don't see them coming. The element of surprise is like 90% of the equation. You catch someone off guard, hit them with something emotional, and their brain goes into panic mode. They start making concessions, apologizing for things they didn't even do, basically turning themselves inside out, trying to fix a problem that was manufactured specifically to make them vulnerable. But when you know it's coming, when you've had 3 weeks to prepare your response while watching them rehearse their lines, that's a completely different game. The manipulation becomes almost embarrassing to watch, like seeing a magician perform a trick when you already know exactly where the card is hidden. Let me set the scene. It's a Tuesday evening in mid-September. I'm sitting at the kitchen table in our Back Bay brownstone apartment, going through quarterly reports from work. The numbers were solid. Better than expected, actually, which put me in a good mood. My briefcase sat on the counter behind me with the transfer approval letter I'd been reviewing earlier that day. The decision I'd been debating for the past week about whether to accept a major promotion that would relocate me halfway across the country. Then she walked in. There's this energy people give off when they've been rehearsing something, like they're running through their lines one more time before the cameras roll. Brooke had that energy. She sat down across from me, folded her hands on the table, took one of those deep breaths you see in dramatic television scenes, and delivered her line with a pause that would make a soap opera actress proud. I think we need to take a break. Some time apart to evaluate what we really want. Now, most dudes would probably start spiraling right there, asking what they did wrong, begging for another chance, promising to change everything, maybe even crying a little, which is probably exactly what she was expecting. But here's the thing. I'd been expecting this exact moment for 3 weeks. See, her best friend Kristen isn't exactly subtle when she's coaching people on manipulation strategies. 3 weeks ago, I was supposed to be at the gym when Kristen came over for one of their Tuesday evening wine sessions. I'd forgotten my wallet and came back to grab it. Went to my home office to check if I'd left it on my desk. The door was slightly open, and I could hear Kristen's voice coming from the living room loud and clear over the speakerphone. Just call it a break and watch him fall apart. Kristen had that attorney voice dripping with confidence. Men like Garrett need to feel needed. Take that away and he'll be begging to prove himself worthy. I was already holding my phone, checking work emails. I quietly opened the recording app and hit record. Brooke's voice had been uncertain. But what if he just agrees? Trust me, he won't. Kristen had laughed like it was the most ridiculous thing she'd ever heard. His whole identity is wrapped up in being the stable, reliable husband. Threaten that and watch the transformation. When he's desperate and promising to change everything, you'll have all the power. Then you can train him to be the husband you actually want. Train him, like I'm some kind of rescue dog that needs to learn tricks. Like 7 years of marriage and building a life together meant nothing compared to whatever fantasy husband existed in her head. The one who apparently needed to be broken down and rebuilt from scratch using psychological manipulation techniques provided by a divorce attorney. The audacity was almost impressive. Almost. I stood there for about 15 minutes, listening to the entire coaching session. Every manipulative tactic, every psychological pressure point they planned to exploit, every assumption they made about how I'd crumble the second she dropped the B word. Then, I went to the gym anyway, came home later like nothing happened, and started thinking seriously about that Minneapolis opportunity I'd been debating for 4 months. Funny how clarity comes to you when you realize the person you trusted most has been taking classes on how to manipulate you. The Minneapolis position had been sitting on my desk for months. Regional Director of Financial Analytics. The kind of title that opens doors and commands respect. The kind of opportunity you spend your entire career working toward. I'd been hesitant because of Brooke. Because uprooting our life seemed unfair to her. Because I thought our marriage was worth more than career advancement. Turns out I was the only one who felt that way. So when Brooke delivered her rehearsed line that Tuesday evening, I just looked up from my reports, nodded slowly, and said something she clearly wasn't expecting. Finally. She blinked. The confidence flickered. This wasn't in Kristen's script. What do you mean, finally? Her voice already had a crack in it. 3 weeks of anticipating my emotional breakdown, and I hit her with a one-word response that wasn't even in the playbook. I reached behind me to the counter and grabbed the document from my briefcase. The letterhead from our corporate headquarters was visible even from across the table. Well, I've been considering this transfer opportunity to Minneapolis for the past 4 months. I kept my tone conversational, like we were discussing what to have for dinner. Regional Director of Financial Analytics, 40% salary increase, full relocation package, corporate housing for the first 60 days while I find a permanent place. I slid the approval letter across the table. Her eyes scanned it, and I watched her face transform from confident to confused, to something approaching genuine panic. You applied for a transfer? She stammered over the words. 3 months ago. Got the approval last week. I leaned back in my chair, completely calm. I've been debating whether to accept it. Didn't want to uproot our life here in Boston. We've built something good here. So I thought the color was draining from her face now. This was definitely not how Kristen said this would go. But if you want space to evaluate what you really want, I continued, well, that makes my decision pretty straightforward, doesn't it? But I didn't mean... She started backpedaling immediately. I mean, we could work through this. Work through what exactly? I asked. You just said you want a break. Time apart. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. In fact, I'm making it even better. You'll have all the space you need, and I'll be starting fresh in Minneapolis with a career opportunity I've been dreaming about for years. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. The rehearsed script was completely gone now, replaced by genuine confusion. This isn't what I meant when I said break. Really? Because it sounded pretty clear to me. You want space. Time apart to figure things out. Minneapolis gives us plenty of both. I gathered up my papers, including the transfer approval. Actually, this works out better than I thought. I was worried about asking you to relocate, but now I don't have to deal with that conversation. You can't just leave. And now there was real panic in her voice. Why not? I looked at her directly. You just told me you want a break. I'm not leaving you. I'm respecting your wishes while pursuing an incredible opportunity. It's really a win-win situation when you think about it. I stood up and headed toward the kitchen to grab a bottle of water from the refrigerator. The casual movement seemed to unsettle her even more than my words. Oh, and don't worry about the timing, I added. They want me to start in 4 weeks. That gives us plenty of time to figure out logistics. Whether you're coming with me, staying here for your break, or we're splitting our belongings down the middle. 4 weeks? Her voice cracked. Yeah, fast-track program for experienced candidates. They're covering all moving expenses and providing temporary housing until I find a permanent place. I took a drink of water and looked at her. You should probably call Kristen and thank her for the advice. Without her brilliant idea about taking a break, I might have turned down this opportunity. The look on her face was absolutely priceless. The confident woman who had walked in ready to execute a manipulation strategy was completely gone, replaced by someone who was clearly realizing she'd just played herself. 3 weeks of planning, hours of coaching from her attorney friend, probably rehearsing in the mirror. All of it just evaporated the moment she realized I wasn't following the script. I need to think about this, she said weakly. Of course you do. That's what breaks are for, right? Thinking. I headed toward the stairs. I'll be upstairs making some calls. Minneapolis wants a final confirmation by tomorrow morning, and thanks to your timing, I know exactly what to tell them. As I walked away, I could hear her frantically dialing her phone. I didn't need to guess who she was calling. Kristen's brilliant strategy had just backfired spectacularly, and they both knew it. The best part? I genuinely was excited about the Minneapolis opportunity. Sometimes the universe has a funny way of aligning things perfectly. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of hushed, frantic whispering downstairs. It was 7 in the morning and Brooke was already on the phone, which meant one thing. Damage control mode was in full effect. I made my coffee and headed to my home office. Had 3 calls scheduled with Minneapolis HR to discuss relocation details, and I wanted to get started early. The promotion was real. The opportunity was legitimate, and her little stunt had just made my decision incredibly easy. Around 9, she appeared in my doorway with that fake casual attitude people use when they're trying to seem nonchalant but are actually freaking out inside. So I talked to Kristen last night, she started. Oh, the one who's been coaching you on relationship psychology for the past month? I didn't look up from my laptop where I was reviewing the Minneapolis organizational chart. She froze. What do you mean, coached me? Please. I finally looked at her. You think I didn't notice? The sudden personality changes, the strategic timing, the rehearsed delivery. I leaned back in my chair. I've been married to you for 7 years. I know when you're being yourself and when you're following someone else's script. Her mouth opened and closed. You knew. I've known for 3 weeks. I overheard that phone conversation where Kristen was explaining how to regain control of our marriage by making me chase you. I kept my voice level. Matter of fact. Honestly, I was curious to see how far you'd actually take it. The color drained from her face completely. So you were just waiting? I was considering my options. The Minneapolis transfer was already on the table. I just hadn't decided whether it was worth disrupting our life here. I shrugged. Turns out you made that decision for me. She sat down heavily in the chair across from my desk. This isn't how this was supposed to go. No kidding. Let me guess what Kristen's script said. I ticked off points on my fingers. I was supposed to panic, beg you to reconsider, promise to change, maybe throw in some expensive jewelry or a romantic vacation to win you back. She didn't answer, but her expression said everything. Here's the thing about manipulation tactics, I continued. They only work on people who don't see them coming. Once you know someone's trying to play you, the entire game changes. My phone rang. Minneapolis HR, right on schedule. Excuse me, I need to take this. I answered with professional enthusiasm. Good morning. This is Garrett Reed. Yes, absolutely. I'm ready to move forward with the acceptance. I watched her face as I confirmed start dates, discussed housing arrangements in the Linden Hills neighborhood, and finalized salary details. This wasn't a bluff or a threat. This was me actively building a new life, and she was watching it happen in real time. When I hung up, she was staring at me with a mixture of shock and desperation. You actually accepted the job. Why wouldn't I? It's an incredible opportunity, a fresh start, and apparently, my wife wants space to figure herself out. Seems like perfect timing all around. But what about us? What about our marriage? What about it? I started typing notes from the call. You said you wanted a break. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. I paused and looked at her. Actually, I should thank you. Without this conversation, I might have let this opportunity pass by out of consideration for you. She was quiet for a long moment. What if I changed my mind? What if I said I didn't want the break anymore? I stopped typing and looked at her directly. You mean, what if you realized your manipulation backfired, and now you want to control the situation again? I wasn't trying to manipulate. Really? So Kristen didn't specifically tell you to announce a break and watch me panic? She didn't coach you on how to make me desperate to keep you? I raised an eyebrow. Because I heard that entire conversation, word for word. She slumped in her chair, caught completely. Here's what's going to happen, I continued, my tone matter of fact. I'm taking the Minneapolis position. It's an incredible opportunity that I've worked years to earn. You can decide what you want to do. Come with me and actually be a supportive partner, or stay here and enjoy the break you asked for. Those are your options. Those aren't really choices, she said quietly. Sure they are. But here's the thing. I'm done with games. I'm done with tests. I'm done with following scripts written by people who think relationships are about power plays and manipulation. My phone buzzed with a text. A moving company wanting to schedule an estimate. I've got the first moving company coming Thursday afternoon for a walkthrough. Second company coming Friday for comparison quotes. If you want to be part of this move, you need to decide now. Not after more conversations with Kristen. Not after more strategic planning sessions. Right now. She stared at me like she was seeing a completely different person. You're serious? You're actually doing this? Dead serious. I've spent too many years building my career to let relationship games derail an opportunity like this. I stood up. Kristen's advice cost you the chance to be in control of this situation. Now you get to decide if it costs you your marriage, too. I headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and when you talk to her today, and we both know you will, tell her that manipulation tactics work both ways. The difference is mine actually succeeded. As I walked out, I could already hear her reaching for her phone. Time for round 2 of damage control. Too bad for both of them. I was already 3 moves ahead. By Thursday afternoon, the first moving company had finished their walkthrough, and I had their estimate in hand. Boxes were ordered and would arrive Friday. I had a detailed timeline taking shape for my relocation. Brooke, meanwhile, had gone through what I can only describe as the 5 stages of manipulation grief. First came denial. She spent Tuesday evening and all of Wednesday acting like nothing had changed. Making dinner. Trying to initiate normal conversations about weekend plans. When I reminded her Wednesday night that we needed to decide what furniture was staying versus going, reality started to hit. Thursday morning brought anger. You can't just uproot our entire life because of one conversation, she yelled while I was in the bedroom sorting clothes into piles. This is insane. I'm not uprooting our life, I replied calmly, placing dress shirts into a box labeled Minneapolis. I'm accepting a promotion that represents years of hard work. You're the one who wanted space to think. That's not what I meant. Then you should have said what you meant instead of following a script from someone who makes money off destroyed marriages. She didn't have a response to that. By Thursday afternoon, the movers arrived right on schedule. 2 guys with clipboards walking through our apartment, taking inventory, asking questions about timeline and destination. This was the first company's walkthrough. Brooke followed us from room to room, getting increasingly desperate as the reality became concrete. When we got to the bedroom, one of the movers asked, "Will both of you be there for delivery in Minneapolis?" I glanced at Brooke, then back at the mover. I'll definitely be there. Still confirming whether it's one household or if we need to split the inventory into 2 separate deliveries. The mover nodded and made a note. Brooke's face went pale. Having strangers witness the uncertainty of her marriage was apparently more real than any conversation we'd had. After the movers left with their measurements and promised to email their estimate by end of day, Brooke finally broke down. You can't just blow up our entire life over one conversation. The anger was back, but underneath it was genuine fear. I was in the living room, beginning to sort books into piles. I'm not blowing up anything. I'm accepting a promotion I've earned. You're the one who said you wanted space to think about what you really want. This is insane. I looked up from the bookshelf. No. What's insane is following advice from someone who profits off destroyed marriages instead of having an honest conversation with your husband. Before she could respond, the doorbell rang. We both knew who it was. Brooke went to answer it, and moments later, Kristen walked in, like she owned the place, radiating that confident attorney energy that probably served her well in courtrooms, but was about to get reality checked in my living room. Garrett, we need to talk about this overreaction. I set down the book I was holding and turned to face her. Overreaction? I'm accepting a career opportunity. That's called making smart life decisions. You're throwing away your marriage because Brooke wanted to feel more appreciated. Kristen crossed her arms. You've been emotionally distant for months. She just wanted some acknowledgement. This nuclear response proves you're not mature enough to handle marriage. I almost laughed. Let me stop you right there. I overheard the entire coaching session 3 weeks ago. Kristen's confidence flickered just slightly, but I saw it. The one where you told my wife to manipulate me into desperation, I continued. The one where you said men like me need to feel needed, and watching me fall apart would give her power in the relationship. That coaching session, Kristen's face went from confident to cautious. I was just trying to help her. You're a divorce attorney. You make your living when marriages fail, and you've been coaching my wife on psychological manipulation tactics. I shook my head. That's not friendship. That's sabotage with a smile. I was trying to help her feel appreciated. By teaching her to lie and manipulate instead of having an honest conversation? That's your definition of help? Brooke had gone silent, watching this exchange with growing horror. Here's what you didn't count on, I said, my voice calm but firm. I don't respond well to manipulation. I don't play games. And I definitely don't reward people who try to control me through psychological tactics. Garrett, please. Brooke tried to interject. There's nothing to discuss, I said, turning back to my books. I'm taking a job I've earned through 7 years of 60-hour weeks. You wanted space to think. Now you have it. Kristen's strategy backfired. End of story. Kristen tried one more angle. What about forgiveness? What about working through problems together? I am forgiving, I said. I'm not contesting any joint assets. I'm not demanding anything beyond a fair division of property. I'm even being civil about this entire situation. I looked directly at Kristen, but forgiveness doesn't mean accepting manipulation as normal behavior. And here's something else you should know. I recorded that coaching session on my phone. Massachusetts is a one-party consent state, which means that recording is perfectly legal. Kristen's face went white. You wouldn't. Try me. If you contact my employer, if you try to interfere with my career in any way, that recording goes to the Massachusetts Bar Association. I'm sure they'd be very interested to hear about an attorney coaching people on manipulation tactics. She left without another word. Brooke stared at me. You recorded us? I recorded someone in my own home discussing how to psychologically manipulate me. Turns out that's not just legal. It's probably the smartest decision I made that day. Friday brought the bargaining stage. Brooke had clearly spent Thursday night doing some real thinking, trying to process what was happening. She found me in the kitchen Friday morning, reviewing the moving company estimates on my laptop over coffee. I'd printed out the 2 quotes that had arrived overnight and was comparing them side by side. I've been thinking about what you said, she started, about showing you who I really am. Have you? I circled the lower estimate with my pen, then made a note about the second company coming that afternoon for their walkthrough. I realized that I've been letting other people influence me too much. Not just Kristen, but my mother, my sisters, even social media. I lost track of what I actually wanted versus what I thought I should want. This was more self-awareness than she'd shown in weeks. But it was also coming 3 days too late. That's good insight, I said genuinely. You should explore that. But what if I can prove that I've changed? What if I can show you that I'm not the person who tried to manipulate you? I looked at her directly. How exactly would you prove that? I could come to Minneapolis with you. We could start fresh, away from all the influences here. Start fresh by following me to a city where you know no one, have no job, and no support system? I shook my head. That sounds like dependence, not change. She was quiet for a moment. Then what would convince you that I'm different? Nothing. That's what you don't understand. This isn't about convincing me or proving anything. This is about the fact that when you thought you could get away with it, you chose manipulation over honesty. By Friday evening, I had quotes from both companies and knew exactly which one I'd be hiring. Saturday came and went with an uneasy silence. Brooke spent most of the day on the phone with various family members. I could hear her voice through the walls, talking to her mother, then her sister, then her brother. By Saturday evening, they'd clearly all spoken to each other and formed a unified position. I spent the day finalizing moving logistics and confirming my Monday morning flight to Minneapolis for house hunting. Sunday dinner at the Mitchell house was usually something I enjoyed. Patricia Mitchell was an excellent cook, and Donald told good stories about his years as a contractor. Today, though, the atmosphere was different from the moment I pulled into their driveway. I'd driven myself separately, in my own car. I wanted the freedom to leave when this conversation was done. I grabbed my leather folder from the passenger seat, the one containing the transfer letter, my phone, and the transcript I'd spent Saturday evening creating from the recording. We were supposed to gather for their traditional 1 o'clock Sunday meal. But the tension was already thick when I walked in at 12:30. "So you're the man who's apparently too good for family now?" Donald said as I walked into their living room. The whole family was there. Brooke's parents, her sister Kelly, who worked as a nurse at Mass General, her brother Brian, who was an attorney at a corporate firm downtown, and even Brooke's grandmother, whom Patricia had picked up that morning from her retirement community in Wellesley. The presence of the grandmother, who rarely left her community, told me everything I needed to know about how seriously they were taking this. They'd clearly been primed for an intervention. I set my leather folder on the coffee table. "Actually, I'm glad everyone's here. Saves me from having to repeat this conversation multiple times." Brooke shot me a warning look from across the room, but I was way past caring about her comfort level. "So, I understand there's been some confusion about why I'm relocating to Minneapolis," I began. "Let me clear that up for everyone." Patricia jumped in immediately. "We know you got a job offer, Garrett, but leaving your wife over career advancement seems extreme." "You're absolutely right," I said. It would be extreme if that's what was happening. But that's not the whole story, is it? I looked directly at Brooke, who had gone pale. 3 weeks ago, Brooke announced she wanted a break from our marriage. What she didn't mention to any of you is that this wasn't a spontaneous decision. It was part of a calculated plan. "What are you talking about?" Kelly asked, confusion clear in her voice. I pulled out my phone. "I'm talking about this conversation I recorded 3 weeks ago when Brooke's friend, Kristen Palmer, came over to coach her on relationship manipulation tactics. For context, Kristen is a divorce attorney." The room went completely silent. "You recorded us?" Brooke whispered, her eyes wide with panic. "I recorded someone in my own home discussing how to psychologically manipulate me. In Massachusetts, that's perfectly legal. One-party consent state." I looked around the room. Before I play this, I want to be clear. This recording was made in my home office. I wasn't eavesdropping. I came home early from the gym, forgot my wallet, and went to my office to look for it. Kristen and Brooke were in the living room having this conversation on speakerphone, and I could hear every word clearly through my open office door. I made a decision to document what I was hearing. I hit play. Kristen's voice filled the room, crystal clear. "Just call it a break and watch him fall apart. Men like Garrett need to feel needed. Take that away, and he'll be begging to prove himself worthy." Then Brooke's voice. "You really think this will work? Trust me. When he's desperate and promising to change everything, you'll have all the power in the relationship after that. Then you can train him to be the husband you actually want." I let it play for about a minute, enough to establish the manipulation coaching clearly, then stopped it. The silence in the room was deafening. Donald looked between me and his daughter. "Is this true?" Brooke was crying now, but not the sympathetic tears she'd been using all week. These were tears of absolute humiliation. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she managed. "What wasn't supposed to be like what?" her grandmother asked sharply. "You trying to trick your husband?" "Kristen said it would make him appreciate me more," Brooke sobbed. "So instead of talking to your husband like an adult," Brian said, looking at his sister like he'd never seen her before, "you decided to play mind games?" I pulled out the Minneapolis offer letter and set it on the coffee table next to my phone. "This is a regional director position with a 40% salary increase and full relocation package. It's the kind of opportunity most people work their entire careers for." I set the recording transcript I'd printed out next to the letter. "Your daughter tried to manipulate me into being a more grateful husband by threatening our marriage. When that backfired because I already knew about the plan, she spent this week calling all of you to paint me as the villain for choosing career advancement over fixing our problems." Patricia picked up the transcript and started reading. Her expression changed completely as she absorbed the words. "The real question," I continued, "is what kind of person gets coached on how to psychologically manipulate their spouse, then follows through with the plan when they think it'll work?" Kelly was staring at Brooke in shock. "You actually did this? You planned this whole thing?" "I was just trying to make him pay more attention to me," Brooke said weakly. "By pretending you wanted to leave him?" Her grandmother shook her head. "That's not how marriage works, honey. Brian, the attorney, was reading the transcript now. Let me get this straight. Your friend Kristen Palmer, a divorce attorney, coached you on manipulation tactics. She said it would help, Brooke whispered. Help destroy your marriage, apparently, Patricia said quietly. I stood up and collected my documents. The movers come Wednesday. I fly to Minneapolis tomorrow to finalize housing. The job starts the following week. What about counseling? Patricia asked. What about working through this? Work through what exactly? The fact that she tried to manipulate me? Or the fact that she got caught? I shook my head. Some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. Brooke looked around the room desperately. The family that had been ready to shame me for abandoning her was now looking at her like she was a stranger. Please, she whispered to me, don't leave like this. I'm not leaving like anything, I said calmly. I'm accepting a promotion I've earned and starting a new chapter in my life. You're the one who said you wanted a break to think things through. I headed toward the door, then turned back one last time. For what it's worth, I hope you figure out what you actually want, instead of letting your friend decide for you. As I walked to my car, I could hear the family discussion erupting behind me. Not angry voices directed at me anymore, but confused, disappointed voices directed at her. Monday morning came early, but I was ready for it. My 7 a.m. flight to Minneapolis meant leaving the apartment by 5:30. I'd packed everything I needed for a week of house hunting. Laptop, tablet with saved property listings, folder of financial documents for lease applications, 3 suits for meetings with the new team, running shoes because I wasn't about to let a major life change derail my routine. Brooke had insisted on driving me to Logan Airport, and I'd agreed. Part of me wondered if she was hoping for some last-minute reconciliation scene, some dramatic moment where I'd change my mind at the curb and decide to stay. The car ride was silent, not the comfortable silence of two people who don't need to fill every moment with words. This was the heavy silence of two people who'd run out of things to say. At the terminal drop-off, she finally spoke. What if I came to Minneapolis in a few months? After I've had time to work on myself, would you consider starting over? I looked at her one last time. Really looked at her. The woman I'd married 7 years ago. The woman I'd planned to spend my life with. The woman who'd chosen manipulation over honesty when she thought she could get away with it. If you're going to work on yourself, do it for yourself, not to win me back. So that's it? 7 years of marriage. Just over? 7 years ended 3 weeks ago when you chose to follow Kristen's advice instead of having an honest conversation with your husband. I picked up my carry-on and opened the car door. Take care of yourself, Brooke. As I walked toward the terminal entrance, I didn't look back. Not because I was trying to make a point, but because I was already thinking about the property listings on my tablet, the meeting scheduled for later in the week, the new chapter that was about to begin. The week in Minneapolis was productive. By Tuesday afternoon, I'd seen 8 properties with a realtor named Janet, who specialized in relocating executives. She'd picked me up from my corporate housing in a silver SUV, and we'd crisscrossed the city looking at everything from downtown condos to suburban houses. By Thursday, I'd found a house in Linden Hills, a 3-bedroom with a home office and a view of the park. Hardwood floors throughout, updated kitchen with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, a 2-car garage that could actually fit 2 cars, which apparently is a luxury in some parts of the country. The backyard had a mature oak tree and enough space for a grill setup. I signed the lease Friday morning, shook hands with the property manager, and caught an evening flight back to Boston. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of logistics. Brooke and I sorted through 7 years of accumulated belongings with mechanical efficiency. Wedding photos went into a box that neither of us wanted to deal with. Furniture got divided based on who'd bought what. The stuff we'd bought together got split down the middle or sold. She kept the couch, I kept the dining table. Neither of us wanted the bed. The movers came on Wednesday as scheduled. 2 trucks this time since we'd decided on separate deliveries. Her stuff would stay in Boston. Mine would head to Minneapolis. By Thursday afternoon, my truck was loaded and heading west. I watched it pull away from the curb, then went back inside to grab my overnight bag. One more night in the apartment, then I'd follow the truck in my own car. I followed Friday morning, driving my car the 1,000 miles to my new life. Stopped in Cleveland for the night. Grabbed breakfast in Chicago. Pulled into Minneapolis Saturday afternoon just as the moving truck was backing into my new driveway. The movers delivered Saturday. I spent Sunday unpacking boxes in my new house, looking out at the Minnesota autumn. My first day at the new job was Monday. Exactly 4 weeks after Brooke had announced she wanted a break. I walked into that 10th floor corner office with its view of downtown Minneapolis and the Mississippi River. 6 months later, I was settling into that same corner office when I got an unexpected call from Donald Mitchell. His name popped up on my phone screen and I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Thought you should know what's been happening here, he said without preamble. I'm listening. Brooke cut off all contact with Kristen. Completely. Blocked her number, unfriended her on everything. Told mutual friends she didn't want to hear that name again. Got promoted at her job too. Senior position in the marketing department. Moved to her own apartment in Cambridge. Studio with a view of the Charles River. Good for her. I meant it. Kristen, though. That's a different story. He paused, and I could hear him taking a breath. Word got out about what she did. The recording made its way around their social circle. Someone shared it at a dinner party. Then it got forwarded to a few more people. Then a few more. You know how these things spread. I did know. She's been ostracized. Lost several clients when word spread about the manipulation coaching. 2 of them filed formal complaints. There was an informal bar investigation. Nothing official came of it, but the damage was done. Her reputation in Boston legal circles is basically destroyed. She moved to Providence 3 months ago trying to start fresh. Actions have consequences. She tried reaching out to apologize to you through the family. Called Patricia 3 times asking for your number. Said she wanted to explain herself. Make things right. I hope you didn't give it to her. No way in heck. Patricia told her that some bridges once burned stay burned. But she's telling everyone who will listen that this whole situation ruined her life. That she was just trying to help a friend and got punished for it. Fair. She ruined her own life when she decided to sabotage other people's marriages. That's not friendship. That's entertainment at someone else's expense. That's what I told her. Donald cleared his throat. Anyway, I just wanted you to know. And Garrett? For what it's worth, Patricia and I think you handled the whole thing right. We're sorry our daughter put you through that. You deserved better. I appreciate that, Donald. Really. After hanging up, I got back to work. Had a department meeting in 20 minutes and quarterly projections to review. That evening, I got a text from an unknown number. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed you to know that you were right about everything. I'm sorry for who I was. I hope you're happy. I deleted it without responding. Some doors need to stay closed. 3 months after that, I was at a Twin Cities Analytics Professionals networking event when I met Olivia, data scientist at Target's corporate headquarters. Smart, direct, 0 games. The event was at some rooftop bar downtown. I was grabbing a drink when she walked up to the bar next to me and ordered the same thing I was having. We got to talking about predictive modeling and machine learning applications in retail. Sounds boring, but when 2 people are genuinely passionate about data, it's actually pretty engaging. We grabbed coffee the next week at this place near her office, then dinner the week after that at a restaurant she'd been wanting to try. By the 3rd date, I knew this was different. She said what she meant. She asked direct questions and gave direct answers. When she disagreed with something I said, she told me instead of storing it up for some future argument. It was refreshing in a way I didn't know I needed. 8 months after I'd moved to Minneapolis, I ran into Brian Mitchell at a financial conference in Chicago. He was there representing his firm. We grabbed lunch. Brooke's doing better, he said. Actually doing better. Not the fake kind where she's just waiting for you to notice. That's good to hear. She asked me to tell you she's not going to reach out again. Said she finally understands why you left. I nodded. I appreciate that. For what it's worth, my whole family thinks you handled it right. Dad still talks about those quarterly reports you sent him. Says you're the only person who ever explained investment portfolios in a way that made sense. That got a laugh out of me. Tell him I said hello. Will do. Brian hesitated. You happy out there? I thought about my corner office, my house in Linden Hills, Olivia and our plans to visit her family in Wisconsin next month. The promotion I'd just been offered to oversee the entire Midwest region. Yeah, I said. I really am. We shook hands and went our separate ways. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.